Welcome everybody, Bits and Bobs. We are busy today. Already, Dermot Gleeson has been in studio talking about his new book, Farewell to the Fairways. We are going to play that out to you tomorrow. Later on, Dan McDonald will join us to explain the Eileen Gleeson situation. Well, I suppose there's not much explaining needed, but he'll give us the lowdown nonetheless. Happy to say here in the studio, Conan, hello.
Hello, Joe.
And Conor McKeon is in the building. Conor.
Hi, Joe.
Quick email in, very quick, just to get things going. Mackie T says, lads, quick email, just to say enjoying the podcast, especially Bits and Bobs. He said, that's it really. I just wanted to see if you'd all do that whistle thing in response, approvingly. All the best, Mackie T. You sort of do, a little chuckle. Ronan Mullen does a whistle.
Okay.
Ronan goes, whoo.
Is it involuntary or is it sort of
I don't know.
contrived?
Generally contrived in the media, is
okay,
that not the,
I think
the
so,
way?
Yeah.
So, what's happening in the world? A man has been arrested by the PSNI on suspicion of sexual assault. You may have seen this story. An alleged incident during the recent Dharma GAA trip to America. The PSNI have confirmed the news. They arrested a 30-year-old man on Tuesday of this week. Since then, he's been released on bail. This trip was on foot at the All-Ireland win. They were in Miami in November. The complaint is understood to have been made by one of the members of the travelling party in Florida. So that situation has come to light this week and will play out. Obviously, there is not much we can say at this point, but that is very much in the news. Very sad this. Eddie Jordan on his Formula One podcast has revealed he was diagnosed with, quote, an aggressive form of cancer earlier this year. He said he suffered with bladder and prostate cancer, which has now spread to his spine and his pelvis. He's 76 years of age. He said, this is just a message to everybody listening. Don't waste or put off getting checked. Go and get tested, because in life you get chances. So you just wish him the best. He's one of these kind of around forever, energetic, indestructible types. And of course no one is, but that's just always how you kind of see Eddie Jordan, forever young. Looks the same now as he did 20 years ago.
Yeah, in my head, I saw that in that report today, was 73, and I was like 76, sorry. Yeah. So if you asked me 15 years ago what age Eddie Jordan, I could have told you that I would have said that he was 76, not because he looked it, and still he doesn't look it, but just because of the ubiquity of, I know the Formula One has gotten a serious kind of second win because of the Netflix thing, but I seem to recall that our generation, and I say that not as Jim Gavin and getting Joe putting another decade or so onto his life, but I think Formula One kind of, I might be right in saying that, you know, the Murray Walker era, the Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill,
Nigel Mansell. Yeah,
and after that it kind of quickly veered off the edge of the cliff. But I think obviously because Eddie Jordan was Irish and we were all kind of invested in it, I do recall getting up at kind of 5-6 o'clock in the morning to watch Grand Prix from places I had never really heard of before, which now that's definitely not something you'd be doing.
Well, terrible news, and you wish him well, obviously. So that news came through in his podcast today. And then Bill Belichick is rejoining the coaching ranks. 6 rings, the most successful coach in NFL history. Apparently at the moment he has 7 media gigs. He's everywhere. Not somebody you would think of as a media darling, but he's been very much everywhere over stateside at the moment. There was no NFL interest in Bill Belichick. His day has come and gone was the verdict. And so he has become the head coach at North Carolina. And so obviously when it comes to American sports, that does not mean he's taking a median salary. He is being paid $10 million a year to coach at North Carolina. 5-year deal, $50 million. So it's always that amazing thing. The highest paid public employees in America are all football coaches. The highest paid, if you're interested in American college football, is Kirby Smart, who gets $13 million per year. Georgia said to him, have a 10-year deal, it's worth $130 million.
He said yes.
He said yes, he did. I can confirm. The response, by the way, and I saw a couple of his former players, Brady, Edelman, Gronkowski, who are now all on TV quite a bit, and this was in the last 48 hours when this was being talked about as likely, and they all said this is a terrible idea.
Yeah?
Terrible idea for North Carolina.
Oh, sorry.
in that he has no experience at this level. He's not built to work with this kind of age group of players necessarily. And they were sort of laughing at the thought of Bill Belichick on a couch with some parents and their 17-year-old son trying to convince them that North Carolina was the place to come. This wouldn't be his kind of people skills, soft, cuddly Belichick vibe. So they kind of thought, don't know.
Yeah, but like surely that makes those conversations a non-event now as well, where parents will be like, "You're going to North Carolina because Bill Belichick's there."
Their dad will be, but like the 17-year-old would be like, "Who's this nearly 80-year-old man that you're pushing me towards?" Like,
this is the most successful coach.
No, I don't care. Like I can't have a conversation with him.
Yeah, this guy's won 6 NFLs. You are going to North Carolina. And I think the unfortunate thing for Belichick's point of view is I saw that he's 14 wins in the NFL off the all-time record. So I think he was sort of holding out,
itching just to get 14 wins. Yeah.
And there's 3 vacancies at the minute. I think it's the Jets, Saints. He's not going to get the Jets, obviously, but the Bears. And they were all there, and he was maybe just sitting around to say, "Is anybody going to take me?" But they all know, even at NFL wise now, like what Bill Belichick comes with when you're hiring him. It's not like you're just bringing in a head coach and slotting him into your system. You're hiring an emperor who's going to take over the whole operation, and that's obviously what he can still do at college level, if not NFL.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. It's a bit like management in football at the moment. We want a coach, not an overlord like Ferguson. So I think that went against him, it seems. It's funny when you see the likes of Brady and Edelman, who by all accounts was like a teacher's pet of Belichick's, and Gronkowski. There's no love lost, is there?
There very rarely is.
It's kind of, it reminds me of, and I'm not saying it's a direct parallel or the same in every way, but it just gives me Brian Cody, Kilkenny players vibes. It just really does. Like, we were great for each other. We couldn't have been more successful, and yet it just doesn't feel as if there's much
and you
there.
see Brian Cody, I mean, we might be strangling the simile here, but Brian Cody dropped down a level to manage a club, and this year, James.
What was he paid?
This year they were relegated for the first time, I think, in their history or since turning senior. So yeah, sometimes. Well, there's a couple of things there. Like sometimes the drop in level and the change in the scene and the kind of, the contact time with players. Sometimes that's too much for a manager to surmount. But the other thing is, sometimes even the greatest coaches have a sell-by date, and eventually what they have to say doesn't carry quite the same weight as it once did.
Yeah. So there you go. The other thing to mention, Champions League this week, amongst other things, Arsenal beat Monaco 3-0, Saka scored 2, Havertz the other. Caoimhin Kelleher dropped for Liverpool's 1-0 away win to Girona, and Manchester City full-blown crisis deepens ever more, beaten 2-0 away to Juventus. That is 1 win in 10. You were saying you watched Arsenal last night, and their 3-0 win against Monaco was not half as impressive as that sounds.
Oh no, they were. Well, they're a funny team, like just to the untrained eye, that they seem to have an awful lot of what is required to be an exceptional team. But the last 2 things that they need are a striker who can consistently do things a striker does, and a better version of Gabriel Martinelli. They need somebody. Like he kind of has these beautiful flourishes, great feet and lots of pace, but a lot of time he just kind of like runs out of ability, and ends up kind of going over the end line. So they seem to be a couple of positions light of being a really exceptional team. But it's hard to know with that Champions League. You're looking around at, other than Liverpool, like, is there anybody really, really at it?
No, not especially. I've Caoimhin Kelleher, Shay Given said on Premier Sports, I'd be headbutting the plane on the way home, thinking, what do I need to do? It's extreme, isn't it?
It's extreme because when I saw the quotes, I was sort of with Shay Given, and then I didn't realise that Alisson was back. It's like, hang on a second. I mean, like the number one is back, one of the best goalkeepers in the world is back, and I do think there's also a bit of we're probably flowering up the 10-game period. He did very well, but he did make more than one mistake. Even that same Newcastle game that they're talking about, he made his one mistake, and he made 2 mistakes. Like, he conceded 2 goals.
All right, we know.
So we do have this want about us to.
It's terrible. I have to say, this is a phenomenon that I've noticed all the way back to the days when people I know. Friends of people who would have been the same vintage as my dad used to make an argument that Denis Irwin was the best player in the Premier League. I think we've become so besotted with our own over there, we do tend to artificially kind of inflate just how good they are and only see the good in them. But I do think...
Someone said Caoimhin Kelleher would go for 80 million in the transfer market.
Well, I remember not too long ago, after Evan Ferguson scored a hat-trick against Newcastle, where people were talking about 150 million, and if only Arsenal could afford to get the money together, they'd have. So
no, we do with that. Although Denis Irwin isn't. I wouldn't. I mean, of all the sacred cows you went after there, I don't know if Denis Irwin was the one to pluck at.
I think it was around the time that you were only allowed to have 3 non-English players in the Champions League team.
Yeah,
and.
You'd often see Schmeichel on the bench,
and
Keane on the bench.
Yeah, and Irwin was routinely dropped for that. And I remember, I seem to recall a next door neighbour now taking great umbrage from long distance.
There is an argument he was the best fullback in the Premier League.
Yeah, but what he was saying was the best player in the Premier League.
Right, okay, not the best player.
Joe was very defensive.
Of Irwin, I would be. Yeah, but I think, do you know what? When it's only when you watch those games back now, where they're routinely showed on Sky Sports late at night, when you're kind of putting off, I don't know, the doom scrolling end of the day, just sitting there like thinking, what am I doing here? But Irwin was a modern fullback in what was a very, as it seems now, like agricultural age of football. He was the same body shape as the current day players. He was slight, there wasn't a pick on him. Whereas at the time, the slightness almost was out of kilter with the strong, heavier players in the league at that time. He was slight, he was 2-footed, and unlike pretty much everyone around him, he never gave the ball away. Never gave it away. And so you watch those games now, and the reason they become slightly unwatchable and tedious is because there's no respect for possession. And there you go, quietly going about his business, never gives away. Short, sharp passes.
So how much would he be worth in today's transfer market?
Well, if Caoimhin is 80, I don't know what he'd be worth. But like fit as, run up and down all day, can take free kicks, penalties, genuinely 2-footed. I mean, he could, you know the way they say it about lots of players, and it's not true, but you could have picked Irwin up as he was in 1997
and transposed him
and dropped him in, and it would have been fine. Whereas there were, I think, the majority of players you couldn't have done that. Yeah. So just settle.
I just have that post-colonial self-hatred sort of buzz going on.
I figured you might.
Yeah.
I don't want to analyse Shay Given here, but on that he reached for headbutting the plane. Anyone in the habit of assaulting inanimate objects here?
No, but I do, for some reason, on my doom scrolling, tend to come across lots of videos of people having tantrums on planes, and it puts the fear into God into me for the next time on the plane. What happens if I'm on the same plane as the lunatic who was headbutting it? Turns out it was Caoimhin Kelleher.
Yeah. The Man City thing then, beaten 2-0 away to Juventus. That is now 1 win in 10. In this Champions League table, they're 22nd. They're just one behind. They're behind Celtic. 2 rounds to go. But their next match is PSG away, who also aren't going well. And then they've Club Brugge. Now that next match is on the 22nd of January, 2025 against PSG. Will Pep Guardiola have resigned by then?
Well, it's usually the period in the season when Manchester City come back and they've all, I don't know, eating their magic vegetables or whatever it is that turns Manchester City into such a dominant winning force at the back end of the year. But
that sounds like a doping accusticion.
No, well, I'm not accusing them necessarily of doping. But
can we just clear that up?
I'm just saying they go away, they eat some stuff, and they come back.
But no, what I'm saying is the trend of their last few years is they've always had a blip. But I suppose what I'm saying is that we're getting into the point where the blip is now becoming irreversible.
I think in the league it pretty much has reached that point. Premier League.
Yeah. But if they lose one more in the Champions League, they might not get through in what is basically the easiest Champions League group stage of all time to get through.
Yeah.
Something very endearing about Pep doing the maths in his head. He said about, we need to get a point, maybe 3 against PSG to qualify in the top 24 of the Champions League. Something sweet about that, man.
Enjoying that, are you? Yeah. I'm not enjoying him seeing him this way.
No?
I thought I would enjoy seeing him this way. I'm not.
I forgot you love Pep as well.
I don't love him. The personality I dislike, but I don't know. Did you see the video of him on the street with the fan?
Yeah.
Ooh. So he's walking by a fan who says the most vanilla comment. This is just on the street after a match, but nowhere near the stadium, near his hotel. And I think the fan, who's obviously holding the camera, so you can't see him, said something like, "Oh, why'd you lose?"
No, it was like,
"Oh, you lost."
Pep ignored him, and he said, "Jesus, just because you lost."
Sorry. So Pep blanks him just because you lost, and Pep walks on another 6, 7, 8 paces, and then turns back to come at this guy in a very, I would say, purposeful way, and he had to be held back. Yeah. The neuroticism. That's why I ask: will he be there in January? Not because he'll be sacked. He'll never be sacked. Will he just say, "Right, I'm out. Sabbatical. Are we nearing some kind of a
We forget,
crescendo?
not that you forget, but like we don't even speak anymore about how much Pep Guardiola is being paid by this project, by this club, to do all the stuff that he's done. I think he probably feels a responsibility to kind of pep his way out of it. You know, like this is one of the things that gets hung on Pep Guardiola, whether it's rightly or wrongly, is that, well, he's only managed Barcelona, Bayern Munich and Manchester City, so he's had all the resources, the biggest clubs in the world, and what else are you going to do, only be successful? And that, while that might be true, like there's no way to prove that he wouldn't be successful with those other clubs. That's not the job he has had to do, but the job he has to do is quite a different one to anything that he has done in the past few years. And it's not just to get Manchester City out of this funk, it's the fact that they seem to be, over the last few years, far more cognizant of their spending, and he can't simply buy his way out of it. And he has to manage an ageing team, and he has to manage grumpy players and underperforming players who they signed for 100 million, like Jack Grealish, and you can see Kevin De Bruyne, and the sort of this kind of scorpy head in him every time he comes on now as well. So I like a little bit like, you know, maybe the Dublin Footballers or the Kilkenny Hurlers. They're a much more interesting team now that they're not winning anymore, because they can completely implode, or they can somehow find a way out of it. But either way, I think they're more watchable.
I'm glad, by the way, you did note Jim Gavin with that assassination attempt on me. Twice he said our generation.
Yeah, you did.
Twice.
You left it the first time, in fairness to you.
You can't say it a second time. Do you know, I was 7 watching you win the All Ireland. Like,
and he queried you picking him up on the phone.
I know, he was like, "Oh, really? Are we not the same generation?" No, we're not the same generation. It's a disgrace. Kevin, in response to the rugby conversation this week, agreed with Keane Tracy and I. He said, "Excellent chat about how poor the Champions Cup competition is becoming. I used to have a season ticket at Munster, but I stopped renewing it. Most games, second string and development players were playing. I know you have to develop younger players, but the majority of fans want to see big players week in, week out. In my opinion, that's one of the reasons crowds are so poor, apart from one-off games like Munster-Leinster." Thanks, Emil. Kevin, we had a controversial one in here, fellas. Dearest Indo Sport team, love the podcast. Excellent work so far. Why do that?
I know, he's judging us, isn't he?
You know what I mean? That's a real, like, this could change at any minute.
Yeah. Don't get too big for your boots.
I'm writing to you about a minor incident that occurred in my gym the other day, which raises the overall thorny concept of gym etiquette. I was using a weight machine when another gentleman inquired how long I had left to do. I explained I was only getting started. I would be 10 to 15 minutes max. He then asked if we could share the machine, to which I politely said no, adding that I was going to do my thing solo and I'd go as fast as I could. He looked both crestfallen and irritated by this, and then proceeded to stand on the opposite side of the room staring at me as I continued. For the record, I went faster than usual and I didn't look at my phone once or take the piss at all. I understand we can all be time poor, and this is not a piece of premium gym real estate. But this is a piece of premium gym real estate. But I did get there first, did I not? Yes, you did. I've always just gone and done something else when faced with the same situation. I know you're supposed to say yes and share thusly when asked, but I contend that asking this of someone else and interrupting someone else's workout in general, unless they're clearly just lounging around on their phone for ages, is actually the greater social faux pas. Look, I know I'm technically in the wrong here, and I accept I have made an enemy for life, but I stood my ground, and I feel like I did the right thing. Judge me accordingly. Best wishes, David. Fine email. I'd say,
anybody who uses if you find yourself reading back your emails and you've used the word thusly, I think, you know, you've no regrets. That's a general rule of thumb. I don't know that we have jurisdiction over gym etiquette, particularly this person's gym, but I do feel like 15 minutes is a long time to spend on any machine.
It struck me as a long time, yeah. If it was mate, I'll be 5 minutes. Yeah. It's 3 reps of 8 to 12, no?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Sorry, 3 sets of 8 to 12
reps. Push it to 4 sets is still. Why is it taking 15 minutes? Like, and anybody says 10 to 15 minutes, you know it's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Nobody's finishing at 10 there when you say 10 to 15 minutes.
Was the piece of equipment a treadmill?
It was a shower.
No, nobody's blameless here. Like, I agree with David. Like, I wouldn't go over to somebody and say,
Can we share?
Can I share? Because that's not an ideal situation either. Like I don't know what weights we were talking about here, or what machine, but having to continue to change that,
pain, yeah.
Then you start actually competing with each other. Then David is throwing off his rhythm because he's trying to do extra to show off to this guy.
You're saying David was intimidated by...
I'm saying he could have been, but he stood his ground.
We need to
And
know
like, if it was me and I wanted that machine, I would be annoyed that the machine's being occupied for 15 minutes, but I would still just adapt and carry on and continue to look over and sort of speak ill of him in my head.
I asked a fella the other week, how much longer have you got left? Ooh. And he said, do you want to share?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, do you know what, that'd be great. I'm actually up against it, yeah. So maybe that's the polite way to...
That's like the blue sky, Jim, is it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. But maybe the etiquette is you ask, how long have you got left?
That's passive-aggressive though, isn't it?
It depends how you ask. Yeah. Sorry there, no rush at all. Just wondering, how long have you got left?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
like that. And that gives them the invitation... In brackets, what you're not saying there is, can we share?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a nicer way of doing it. It's a bit like in golf where you never ask a group, can I join in?
Yeah.
You let them ask you.
Or, when you want to play through and you're kind of eyeballing the people ahead and you're giving out about them so much.
I hate people like you.
And you're taking way too long.
Yeah.
And then when they say, do you want to go through, you positively, you're Edwardian in your manners.
Jesus, never occurred to me, but if you're asking, I would, yeah.
I think you go one of two ways. You can only go one of two ways when somebody interrupts your stuff and you go very flowery in your manners and your friendliness, or you go openly hostile. And I don't think David should apologise for either way.
Yeah, it's a pain. Like if you don't want to be asked, if you're doing it and someone comes over and says, "Can I share?" It is a bit like, no one wants to do that. I think I'd be in Team David here, in that, in an ideal world, David, you would have offered to share, but if you didn't want to, that's also fine. The guy shouldn't be like, can we share?
Yeah, he can't jump straight to share. It's on David to offer that solution.
And he definitely can't stand across the room staring at you.
No, because he could just be doing something else.
He could absolutely be doing something else.
Yeah. But again, well, I suppose this is more on David's side as well, but to the golf point, there's nothing worse than that crowd like yourself standing then as I'm trying to drive.
There's a manoeuvre known as
it's like, just leave me alone.
There's a manoeuvre known as
the
teapot. You stand with one hand on your hip and then your hand on the driver like that.
I do that.
Yeah, and you do that, and that's to kind of transmit the energy that
I've a good passive aggressive body language behind a slow group.
Yeah, but then what happens then? I slice the ball. Then you have to wait while I walk 20 metres down.
Well, all the more reason to wave us through. If you just sliced it, wave us through. Then I'll play through. You go find your ball.
Yeah, because I can't bring the ball back now on the tee because now you're going to judge me for that too.
Yeah, I didn't. By the way, when the guy offered for me to share with him, it's not the worst experience in the world. Obviously, you do kind of. What's he lifting? Oh, he's doing 82s. Okay,
and then put it up.
Then when he's not looking, you move your 56 to a 94, and then just go. You're up, pal.
And you're a bit more conscious about toweling down equipment and that sort of thing.
There's a bit of, I better go get some blue tissue paper because I don't have a towel with me.
Yeah. I don't know.
Gym etiquette, it's a difficult thing. It's just a nuisance how few machines there are when it's busy.
So
that's the ultimate problem.
Yeah, make more machines.
A little bit. People are paying plenty of money. How about you set up the gyms to cater for premium prime time as opposed to 10 a.m. on a weekday? Do you know what I mean? What's the capacity here when it's 7 p.m. on a Tuesday? Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not going to go in January because it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, well, there is a touch of that.
Larry David that went out at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the alternative to that is you're one of the people who are out in your compression gear, pounding the roads, bumping into one another on the 2nd of January or the 3rd of January.
Do you know my gym pet hate, actually? Sorry, we'll get back to other business in a second. It's actually a pet hate now for every environment I'm in at all times, is put in the gym, music too loud.
Yeah.
What is this? What are we doing? Everyone has headphones, and the other people who don't have phones, if they want the music, they will listen. Yeah. I don't mind a touch of ambience in the background, fine.
Ambience.
Maybe it can be a little dead if there's no music. But these places, restaurants that pump it out, shops that you go into a sports shop. What is this?
Yeah, it's trying to get you to move. I had an instance.
Oh, you think it's trying to get you to move?
I think so. I think there's something in that. It's like if, nightclubs and pubs that have loud music and the speed of the music. There is a subconscious thing that.
I think with the sports shops, it's like we're down with the kids. Look how cool we are.
I had a thing on the bus recently, literally coming from this office, and there was somebody. I was sitting down the back in the long seat, and there was somebody in the middle. and it was a pretty crowded bus, and this person was watching Instagram videos very, very loudly that had loud, and I could see that they had earphones because they were on their lap, and I said the whole thing. I said, "Do you not have earphones?" And this person kind of looked at me. And anyway,
You didn't say that especially
no,
nicely.
no, I didn't. No, I said it very passive aggressively. Like
Right,
I was in a and then
You're in a bad mood coming from work?
I was in a bad mood because I had to leave early. And the worst thing about the story is not to tell you that I got narky with somebody in the bus. It's that literally 48 hours later, I was watching The Overlap, and Roy Keane told an identical story.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
And I was thinking, that's where I am now. Yeah.
No, we're all heading towards that.
I didn't
age.
ask anyone out to the car park or anything like that, but it was.
In that world. Yeah, it's funny. We're all kind of just elbowing our way off each other a little bit, aren't we? But a loud restaurant will do me. I'm gone. I'm not.
No, it's brutal.
I'm not doing it anymore.
But gyms are especially chaotic because you have the music and then you have somebody playing their own music, and then you have somebody changing the music, usually a PT, and as they change it, they're clapping their hands. Like, do you ever, like, there's no confidence like a personal trainer in the gym environment. Like, just owns the room, like, you know, changes the music and walks away clapping the hands, bopping the head like he is in the club.
My one thankfully doesn't have that because they're in a separate. They're somewhere else. I don't know where the PT stuff's happening, but it's happening somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's just the regular sound.
Yeah.
But most people are listening to podcasts. People are trying to listen to Bits and Bobs right now.
Yeah, actually.
You know, again.
Somebody's in the
Blasted out
gym
of
right
it.
now.
Yeah. So share your machine. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. Like I said, it's kind of semi-quiet news day. We'll talk about the Eiling Gleeson news with Dan later on in your feed. Dermot Gleeson will be in your feed tomorrow. George Hamilton's coming in tomorrow as well for
Great.
interview, which will go out next week. Do you want one more email or are you done?
Oh yeah, big time.
Okay. Hello, fellas. Grateful if you could please not mention my name. Thanks. So this person says, really enjoying the show. And as someone with a granny from Dungiven, hearing the beautiful Derry accent is an added bonus.
I want to know the name now. I want, like, that sort of thing. You know,
Connell. No, I can't say that.
Who's his granny?
Is the Derry accent considered a nice accent?
I think it's. I hate when people try to do a Derry accent and they do a Belfast one. It's like, it's not even close.
Oh, sorry. Give me the two side by side. Go.
Belfast one, be a bit more like this, mate. It's just not as nice, is it? Do you know?
Oh, you said that.
Although I do think that people from further south on the island just generally like
The north.
the north accent.
So you'd have are there tons of northern accents then?
Oh yeah, like there's Mid Ulster as well.
What's that?
Mid Ulster. No, I was going to do Antrim. My Antrim would be a bit more like this. Be a bit more Scottish.
Yeah.
Right.
Sambo, straight away, close my eyes. Sambo.
I got a bit of Rory actually there. Yeah.
Mid Ulster. I wouldn't really know where that's coming from.
Right.
Sort of in between, was literally in between Belfast and Derry, and then Donegal is obviously Derry, only a bit more lyrical like this. Hey?
Yeah. There you go. Nice. So we had been talking the other week. A bunch of people were saying that they kind of have stopped watching live sport. They just consume it through podcasts.
Yeah.
And this person, Deep Throat, makes a good point where he or she says sport is prohibitively expensive to watch at home. Plus, as you've alluded to, people don't have the time, etc. I'm really shortening down this email. So the whole podcast, radio, newspaper column things, that's exactly how this person consumes their sport now. But makes a very fair point. This is nothing new. It's always been thus. We are now not at all different to our equivalents in the 1980s, where there was much less sport to watch. So they would have listened to a radio show or picked up a paper on a Monday, read the likes of Conhuila, and it would give them the atmosphere and the demeanour of the players, managers, main points of drama. So in some ways, nothing has changed. Thanks very much. Keep up the great work. Oh, and a reminder, please do not mention my name. Exclamation mark.
We do forget how little sport used to be on television.
Yeah.
Again, not to sound like Jim Gavin, I think we are the first generation. Like, I remember being at home when it was a provincial football final on the television, and I remember somebody remarking that it was kind of a bit of a rarity, like, and I think it had just started around about then. But even talking to somebody recently about the Masters in Augusta and why it is, that is such an evocative tournament, I was like, I think for young Irish people, you might have had the British Open that was on the BBC Saturday and Sunday, and you might have had the Irish Open maybe, but like when we were kids, you were doing stuff on a Saturday and Sunday during the day. So the fact that the Masters was, first of all, televised, and second of all, was late on a Sunday night when you were going to bed, like you forget that the reason that you watched, that we all know so much about, Italian strikers from the 90s, was it was on the television, and prior to that it wasn't on the television. So it was mad how our interest in all those sports was kind of just guided by availability rather than anything else. Whereas now you just, like, everything is on all the time. It's you're waiting for something to smack you between the eyes, but it never really does, because like you can turn it off at any second. Like the idea that it's going to keep you engrossed until that kind of seminal moment happens. Like, I remember watching with my granddad Roberto Carlos score that goal, the bendy free kick against
at Laturnois.
Yeah, Laturnois, and Laturnois was on television.
Yeah.
And I remember that tournament because it was a big deal about the fact that it was on the television, and it was neither a World Cup or another major championship.
That was 97.
Was it 97? Yeah,
so year before the World Cup.
Yeah. So I think we couldn't be. Yeah, we're definitely not consuming any less sport than we used
Oh
to,
no,
because
sorry,
we didn't have the chance.
No, we didn't have the chance. But he's almost making the point that actually a kind of a threshold is reached whereby it doesn't matter that all this sport is available, because it's irrelevant. You're never going to watch so much of it anyway. So you're still actually reliant on other people via radio, podcast, or columns, kind of guiding you through.
I think you enjoy.
It's not quite the same, but I understand. It's an interesting point you made.
Yeah, I think you enjoyed the sport on television that you weren't necessarily expecting to get to watch. Okay. When all of a sudden something clears in your day, and you hadn't expected it to, and then all of a sudden there's a game on, you go, geez, I hadn't considered this. And then the most disappointing thing is you base your weekend around 2 or 3 sports events that you really want to watch, and they turned out to be a complete letdown.
Yeah, the Champions Cup this week.
Yeah.
Killed me.
And there's probably something in that with the Champions Cup. Obviously, I think the Thomond Park fallout was 17,000 people at that, prime time on a Saturday.
The what park?
Thomond Park.
Thomond.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There we go, throwing in a bit of rugby in there.
Yeah.
But there's obviously so many options now as well, especially when a storm comes at the same weekend, and you have all this access. Because it's one thing I resent, when people talk about today's generation, shorter attention spans. I always think that's a bit... it's usually people in the media being kind to themselves. It's like, well, people don't have short attention spans. That's why they're not watching my thing. That's why they're not reading my piece.
Yeah.
It's like they just have more options. If they're not interested in your piece, they've got literally the flick of a thumb away to find something else that is more.
There's better
more
stuff out there.
Exactly. People will still watch a movie. They'll still sit for 90 minutes and watch a movie.
So they'll binge watch a 20-parter on Netflix because it's good.
Yeah,
they're just not reading your column.
Exactly, and it's not because of how the world's changed. And also, you have all these options. But then, like you just mentioned, you also have now access to the back catalogue. You're going back and watching Denis Irwin clips from 1990s as well.
Pretty much wrapping up. 2 true Gaels in the room. On GAA Watch, I'm seeing the odd, Errol, Kieran did their thing, the odd club game. Is there much happening? Does this feel all very quiet and dead?
Well, it's a mad time of year because this is the dregs obviously of the year, but there are big club games. The 2 club hurling semi-finals are on this weekend. I think.
Do you sense they're capturing?
No, they don't.
Still haven't,
and we know that they don't.
And never. Do you think they ever will, the club matches?
No, I think when you get to an All-Ireland final, people are genuinely interested. What's interesting about the 4 this weekend is that none of them have ever won an All-Ireland before, and that generally doesn't happen. For all the great democracy of the GAA club scene, you still tend to have Ballygunners and Ballyhells and
who are the, not to put you on the spot, who are the 4 this is the All-Ireland semi-finals?
Yeah, so Na Fianna have come through Leinster. They were in the Leinster final last year, they won it this year.
Dublin Na Fianna,
yeah. Then we've Sarsfields from Cork, who ended Ballygunners' reign, and it's an odd phenomenon that Cork clubs don't tend to do particularly well, and certainly haven't over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And then you've got Loughrea, who won in Galway, and then you've Slough-Neil, who won in Ulster. The lineup is Loughrea playing Na Fianna and Thurles, and then in Newbridge, which is a fairly new venue for a hurling match, a neutral venue of that ilk, you have Slough-Neil against Sarsfields. Those matches, I think, I've a memory of a lot of those matches involving teams from Ulster being played in Parnell Park. So I think maybe Newbridge is the new kind of Parnell for that particular game. But it's weird because then it's over, it shuts down. And we always say that, and then all of a sudden, a week later, while you're still digesting your turkey, the pre-season competitions get going. But next year we don't have them for the first time ever.
Because I saw Kildare are going to play Galway in just a friendly. and they're going to charge people in for it.
Yeah, and rather than giving the money to the provincial council, which used to happen for the O'Byrne Cup game, now it'll go to the county board.
The counties will suddenly stop complaining about no pre-season competitions.
Because teams are going to need more, they're going to need more trial runs, they're going to need more practices. Nobody wants to go into the first round of the league on January the 25th and not have a good grasp in the competitive environment of the rules.
Any word on how the Donegal boys fared over in the Middle East?
I was talking to somebody about it today, and they said the fitness thing would not be a factor over there. There would be very little fitness work being done because when teams start to tune up their cardiovascular, or whatever you call it, their athletic development stuff, it tends to get quite precise in terms of heart rate and times, and the sort of heart rate and times you might be recording in Abu Dhabi in December versus what's going to be useful to you in Ballybuffet at the 25th of January, just to be a total discrepancy. So there's
no kidding.
Yeah, so there's not going to be a huge pile of.
So they're working on tactics and how they're going to Jim McGuinness these rules.
But I think there's definitely a reset though as well. This is a kind of a we're all together now. This is how last year went. And there's a kind of a refocusing thing.
Yeah,
I just can't see Jim wasting a week of not doing some 200-meter races as well though. Like he had one of my favourite ever bits of explanations from a coach. He was on the Examiner podcast years ago, and he was talking about just the purity of training and how simple it sounds when he puts it that way. It's like, you're going to be here 3 nights a week anyway. Like, the time commitment's the same for you, for your family. Why would you not bottom out when you're here?
There's a great passage in his book about that.
Yeah, and basically he's talking about once you get fitter, you open up another level. To get fitter and continue to get fitter.
Yeah, it's a great. I tweeted out before, and it got so many kind of likes. It just resonated with so many people. Where he's writing his book, which is a really good book by the way. Yeah. It really is. Early on in Donegal, he stops the session, and it was just a simple hand passing drill. Run 15 meters, pop it off. Other guy runs 15 meters, pops it off, and he stopped it, and he kind of went this rant at them, and he's like, "Why are you not going 100%? We said we were going to go 100%." And he says, "Because you're afraid. You're afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid of being embarrassed. We're not afraid. Now go." Oh, yes. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, you hear that. But I remember a fella called Martin Kennedy who did Anthony Daly brought in with the Dublin Hurlers in his first year. And I know Daly was searching around for a coach, and I think they were out in O'Toole Park, and it was December or whatever, and players were out and they were warm. The way the kind of we're just out in the pitch, we hit a few balls to each other or whatever.
Pottering.
Yeah, he just same thing, shut the whole thing down. He says, right, go back into the dressing room, and he got everybody back into the dressing room, and then he said, right, when you come out here, you come out of the dressing room at 100%.
Oof, like that.
But that's what they talk about. I know it's the most overused word in sport, culture, but that's literally what it is. It's a collective behaviour here. Are we going at it 100% or not? And Jim McGuinness definitely seemed to be one of those people who got people going at 100%.
Yeah, sure did. Fellas, that was Bits and Bobs. Conor, as ever, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Conan, pleasure.
Thanks, lads.
Thank you.